Hi there, my name is Dylan, and I am really excited to introduce you to Copper Skies, which is a game I am developing where players take control of steampunk style airships and have to outmaneuver their opponents in simultaneous combat. So you take your turns at the same time. And whilst I would really like to just hop in and start showing you how the game works, you first need to actually have the game. Right now, it's only available in print and play as I am still developing it, and even once it's fully developed, I plan on having print and play versions available so that anyone can just print it off on your everyday printer, assemble it, and enjoy the game. So, before we begin, you will need to go to the link down below, which will have the rules for the game, and at the bottom of that document, you will see images for the print and play. Download those images separately. Don't try and print them from that document or they will be way too small. And then print the JPEGs once you have them on your device. And then we can get started. So for the crew tokens, it's all one sheet. So the front and back are printed off on one sheet. So I've already cut that apart. You can use scissors. I used this rotary tool of my wife's. But whatever you want to do, you want to make sure that you have a straight line. So I used just this ruler and cut along this straight line here. You can also use box cutters if it's sharp enough, or an X-Acto knife. Now, I have this piece of cardboard and I've already cut it on two edges, and then this is a factory edge. It's always nice to have a factory edge just because it's going to be more accurate than anything you can cut. And I just line this up here, then take my ruler, line it up along where I'm going to cut. I'm just going to line this up here, and I find that the rotary cutter, while great for paper, is terrible for cutting cardboard. So I'm going to use this box cutter. I'm just going to score it, score the cardboard there just with a light little application. I'll move the ruler back a bit, so let's put that back on track. I'm going to press a little bit harder again, flip it around, and cut the other way. And make sure that you're cutting on a surface that if the blade goes all the way through, you don't mind cutting. So now I'm using the thick cardboard. You can use the thinner cardboard or even no cardboard at all if you just want to glue the two pages together back to back. That would actually work pretty well. So I just realized there is a problem with this printout, which I will fix in the next iteration. I should have made these upside down so that you can just cut along this line, glue them on either side of the cardboard like that, and then they're perfect. But because it has extra on the bottom and top, if I line them up edge to edge, this is going to be off by one whole row. So what I'm going to do here is just take a ruler, line it up along the bottom of one of these, take the rotary tool, which is really nice, but again, you can use X-Acto knife or just whatever tool you have that cuts nice clean lines. Run it across that ruler there. Now I've got the bottom off of this. Now when I glue this onto here, it's going to line up to one edge, the bottom part, and then I'll line this up at the back, and then it'll be perfect. Alright, so now that I have the paper the size I want it, I'm going to take a glue stick. You can use white glue. I did use white glue on these damage tokens. If you do use white glue, just make sure you have something to spread it nice and thin, otherwise you're going to get lumpy paper. So I'm just going to take this glue stick, glue. I'm only going to put glue where the actual tokens are. I'm not going to put glue on this white part on the edge just because I don't care about that part, but you do want to make sure that there's glue all across the back. So normally when you're gluing things, you can usually just make a square around the border, maybe do an X through it. But remember, we're going to be cutting this up into littler pieces. So you need to make sure that every row has some glue on it so that it's nice and spread out and it's all going to stick all the time. Now, because of the unevenness of this one, it does matter where I put this. I need to put it aligned to the bottom so that they're all facing down, and make sure that the edges are nice because I need to make sure this lines up so that when I glue this to the other side, it'll line up perfectly, and then I can cut this out and I'll have a two-sided token like this like this nice damage token, except for these are crew action tokens. So you can use a ruler, or even if you have like a nice piece of cardboard, and you just run a flat edge along it, and I'll just make sure that everything is pressed in and glued nicely. Oh, looks like I didn't get enough glue on this corner. So you can see that corner's coming up. So just pop the lid off of here, pull that up a bit, add a little extra glue, and push that down. Corners are generally where you're gonna have problems with not enough glue, so just double check that. There you go. So now that this side is glued down, I want to flip it over, and remember that this is the up. This is where the up is, because I want to make sure that they're facing the same direction. And I'm just going to do exactly the same thing I did with that side, but on this side. Line this up perfectly as I can. Alright, now that I have both sides glued and hopefully lined up properly, let's see here. That's that edge and that's that edge. That's close enough. Close enough for jazz. I'm just going to put something heavy like a book on top of that. And we'll come back to it when it's dry. So, now that that is dry, what we're going to do is we're going to take a knife, because the rotary tool is nice for cutting paper, but it doesn't go through the cardboard quite as nice. It tends to crush it. It might work with the flatter cardboard, but since I'm using the corrugated cardboard, it just crushes it. It doesn't do so well. So I just line this up with the lines, score it just a little bit, and then go over it again with a little more force. One more time, turn it over, go the other way. Now I'm just going to do that for all of these lines. Now it's scored, but it hasn't gone all the way through the other side, which is nice. As you can kind of see that it's roughly on the right lines. Now, because it's still mostly together, it's really easy to do this edge. Alright, now that it's mostly scored, a couple of pieces have come out already. You can see that there. But now it's mostly scored. You can just flip it over, bend it. You just lightly bring your knife along, and it'll come out in nice little pieces. And you can see there, we've got the back of the piece and the front of the piece. And that's how you make the tokens. So one of these printouts should make enough tokens for almost 5 sets of crew tokens. I say almost because one of them will be short 1 repair token, but if you're using a small ship, you'll never need more than 1 repair token anyways. 1 sheet of the front and backs of the damage tokens will be enough for each damage type to have all of the tokens needed for a game. So you can basically use the same method with damage tokens. You can use the same method with ship bases. You just need to do one side with ship bases. Doesn't really matter what's on the bottom. You can use the same method with disability counters. Not all guns have a back, so the Gatling gun here doesn't really matter what's on the back. When it's flipped over, you know it's disabled. With stuff like the Skylance, that does have something on the back for the reload ability, you can use exactly the same method that we used for the damage and crew tokens. And mostly, you can use the same method with the console as well. Consoles will have a back. This one doesn't, but I will have that out soon where you can put the back on the consoles. But there's something else with the consoles, and that is it has these spots for sliders and dials. Now, you don't need to actually do this step. You could just take, say, coins or beads or whatever you have and just set them up on your console where you want them, and then you can move those around, and that can indicate all of your different stats and stuff. But the console is designed to have dials and sliders. So if you want to make use of those, if you notice below the hull, there is this black line here, and I've already cut that one out. And then below the crew actions, there is also a line there. For the console, I actually recommend not using corrugated cardboard. I have for this particular console, but I have another one that is just drying over here that is on just a cereal box cardboard, just because it's thinner and easier to get the paper clip on when the cardboard is thinner. So the way you do this for the lines is you'll want your ruler again, and you'll want to cut 2 lines in this. 2 parallel lines. You want one on the bottom of that thick black line, and then you want nice and straight along the top as well. I find on the flatter cardboard you don't need these lines to be quite as far apart, but for the corrugated cardboard, if that's what you're using, you do want them to be quite a distance apart. And then we'll just chop the ends off here and flip it over, and then just reinforce those cuts from this end. This has a little bit of tape there, which is only mildly perturbing. Just poke the ends out, and then we can just push this whole line out. There we go. Now that that line is out, we can insert the paper clip. But because it's so thick, because the corrugated cardboard is so thick, what you want to do is you want to take your paper clip, just bend this longer part out a little bit, and flip it over, bend this shorter part out a little bit, just so that it makes a bit of a space there. I don't know if you can see this on the camera there, but it's got a bit more space in there, so it's much easier to just bring it around the bottom, put the long end through, and push it up, and now you have a nice little slider. And you can add, like, if you want to take some paper and make like a special looking dial or something to glue onto that, or you know, whatever. I'm sure you guys, there are a lot of people watching that are more creative than me. You can, but just having a paper clip here is enough to show where your dial's at. All right, so now that we have some nice sliders, we're going to do some nice little dials here. So all you need to do for these is you need, first off, a brass tack, which you can get at most office supply places. And you just want to take your knife, or if you have a hole punch or something, you can use that too. But I'm just going to take my knife here, find the approximate center of this here circle, and I'm going to push in, make just the tiniest little line, and I'm going to make an X. So I'm going to rotate it, push in, make another tiny little line. I want to make sure this goes all the way through, so I'm just going to widen that on this end. And then what I'm going to do is I just take my brass tack, push it through that hole there, bend one of them totally flat. Well, I guess bend both of them totally flat, and then take one of them and bend it in half. Now this makes an obvious pointer, so you know what it's pointing at. This is clearly pointing at the 3 and not the 1, because this one is bent. And then you just want to give it a little nice turnaround so that it widens that hole that you made with the X. And there you go. Now you have a nice little dial. You can, just like I said with the paper clips, you can add some sort of fancy thing to the end of this, or even if you want a bigger dial, you can put it in this way, so that's holding in something else, and then that becomes the pointer as well. Again, you can embellish this however you want, make it as fancy as you want, as dumbed down as you want, so long as it gets the information across that's all that really matters. But all right, there you have it. You should now be able to completely assemble a full set of tokens and ships and consoles, and you should be ready to play. Um, the one thing I didn't show you is the maneuverability cards, because they're significantly simpler than this. All you do is you print them out, preferably on cardstock, and then you just cut them out on the paper. You don't need to glue them to cardboard or anything. You can if you want to. I just don't recommend it. It's not necessary. If you do glue it to cardboard, probably use the thinner cardboard, like on cereal boxes and stuff, just because you don't actually need those that thick, and thinner is actually better to a point. You want them robust enough to handle some wear and tear, but if they're too thick, then it's actually hard to maneuver your ships and place them where you want them to be. One last thing you can do with the ship bases is print off an image of the ship that is actually supposed to be there, and then just grab a toothpick, ram it through here as a fly rod, and then just glue the ship to the end of that stick. But I think that's something that you guys can figure out, and you guys can probably figure out a lot. If you guys have any suggestions for better ways of printing this off, better ways of assembling them, or just cool ways that you've assembled them yourselves, let me know. I'd be happy to hear about them, or even better, see them. If you can send me some pictures, I'd love to see some pictures of what you guys are doing. Yeah, but that's all I have to show you today. In my next video, I'll be showing you how to actually play.